Welcome to Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy, where love, life, and legacy meet in the moments that matter most. Every week, I will share sacred reflections of my 30-year marriage before Martin's passing, as well as our life now without him. May these reflections help us live with more weight, warmth, and wisdom. Martin was a letter carrier by profession, but a life carrier by purpose. So let's take a moment and let intentional intimacy speak. Hello, hello, hello. This is Paula. Welcome to episode 18 of Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy. I don't know that this will be a long segment today, because I think I'm just going to be direct and to the point. This is Hearing is Seeing. And I'm going back to a time when MJ was 2 years old and he had to get eye surgery. And it was a scary time for us. MJ had an eye condition known as strabismus, where his eyes would cross and his tear ducts were blocked. And so he had to go and get laser surgery to get his tear ducts unblocked. Now, it was interesting because if anybody knew Martin, Martin had a very loud and boisterous voice. It resonated. It was very strong. And, whenever it was almost like, it's in the Lion King, it goes, Mufasa, woohoo, that kind of stuff. And so Martin never had to really raise his voice with the boys, like they kind of shuddered, at his voice because it was so booming and so powerful. And so Martin had to be intentional about moments when he knew his voice could penetrate and kind of be soft and tender when necessary, and so he had to be very sensitive to that to make sure that his voice was being perceived, the way he intended, and that the power within his voice did not change what he was trying to articulate, So I shared the story about when MJ, like I said, was 2, and we're at the hospital and he's recovering from surgery, and he couldn't see anything because his eyes were still covered and everything. But Martin kind of just leaned into him, and he's like, hey buddy, how you doing? And it wasn't Martin's general sound because he was adjusting himself, right, for the situation, being sensitive to what MJ may be going through. And MJ's like, hey, dad, he's like, hi, daddy, and Martin's like, how did you know it was me? Yeah. And he's like, I know your voice, dad. I know your voice. And for a mom, like sitting there, like watching the interaction, of course, I'm nervous about my child and the surgery and all of this kind of stuff. But watching the two of them interact, um, it was great for me as a mom in so many different ways because I saw Martin's intentionality to articulate and be support for this little boy, but I also saw MJ's response and knowing that his dad was there, right? And despite not being able to see in the natural, hearing became seeing for him. Now I know there are people that may be blind. I can't imagine being blind. I can't, like, um, because I like to see, I like to know what's going on, But when you think about it, when one of your senses is not functioning well, the other senses become more heightened, and so someone who can't see their sensitivity to hear and their other senses may be stronger. And so that's exactly what happened in this scenario with MJ. I might not be able to see, but I can hear. I can hear. I can hear better. I can hear stronger. And so watching a father speak to a son in a situation where the son couldn't see, I'm going somewhere with this, where the son couldn't see, but he had to rely on hearing, um, it blessed me. And as I reflect, I'm going to take a pause and reflect. I'm hoping that you will see what I saw through the hearing on the reflection. So I'll catch you on the other side. So, welcome to this reflection. I was reflecting on John 10, where it talks about um, my sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. And so I'm wondering, like, okay, of all the animals that you could have referenced, or all the things you could have referenced God in that picture or in that story, why did you pick sheep? Well, I looked it up a little bit. Sheep have a different visionary field and sense of vision than other animals. Their eyes are kind of on the sides of their faces as opposed to direct on. So they have more of like a 360, full view sight, although they have blind spots. They can't really see what's behind them. And they struggle a little bit with seeing what's directly in front of them because their eyes are to the side. And so it becomes important what they hear, um, not just what they see. And that's important for us as humans. And so reflecting it from two standpoints. One, our relationship with the Father. My sheep know my voice, a stranger they will not follow. But that comes through relationship, right? When you know someone's voice, when you know their tonality, it comes from spending time with them, and it comes from a relationship, an interaction over time. It's not just random. It's not just something that's here and there. It's over time. Like, even though I don't see you, I can still hear your voice. I can hear and understand, who and what you are, even though visually I can't see it. And so that's how it relates to our interaction with God. But what about our interactions with one another? We can see a person, they can be in front of us, or sometimes, we're on the phone, or, even like text messaging. Text messaging is a really, you know, good one because there's no visual in it. You have to read and you have to infer their tonality and what they're saying through their words. But you have to know the voice of the person that is texting you to even put it contextually in what they are saying. That's what knowing is, right? And so this week, I want you to really be cognizant of your voice, cognizant of how you are speaking and showing up in circumstances and situations where you're not physically seen. Emails, text messages, phone conversations. There's something that comes with a visual, body dynamics and facial expressions and all that can go to help understand, the context and what someone is saying. But so much of our communication nowadays doesn't have a visual component. So I need you to think about how what you're saying and what's being heard by what you're saying is being perceived because there's not a visual. So think about your relationships. Think about how you interact with others. Think about how other people interact with you. And let that be a heightened awareness this week and a greater sensitivity to how you are communicating. Um, Remember, hearing is seeing. So what people are hearing that you're saying creates a visual for them. And so that's the challenge on this week. I hope that something I've said has shifted your energy and awakened your potential. That's always something that I want to do in what I'm sharing, but really be sensitive this week. There's a lot going on. We've just shifted out of Thanksgiving, and now we're entering into Advent and preparing for the Christmas season and the dawn of a new year. And so our sensitivity is very important. Don't be moved by just what you see, but listen very intently to what you hear. Maybe take some time this week and close your eyes and listen. Like, even listen to the environment around you. There's so many things that you can hone in on when you isolate a particular sense. So by closing your eyes, your hearing becomes more sensitive. And so I'm going to encourage you to not look at things the way they truly are. Don't just look at the surface, but kind of close your eyes and hear and see what's underneath, because hearing is seeing. Take care. Have a blessed week. I'll see you next week. Martin Mondays continues on Tuesday with the Tuesday Tea. Check it out and join me and take a sip.
Martin used to say a lot of things. Some were funny, some were wise, but one thing he often said was, wow. Wow. Just those 3 letters. It spoke volumes. It meant a lot. When he didn't know what to say, wow. When he was excited about something, wow. When he was confused, perhaps, or even frustrated, he said, wow. And he's still saying wow. Through this bracelet, he's still saying wow, because he's still saying, may your whole life prove that God is good. And so in closing, that's my hope for you this week. May you have wow moments as you too are living out legacy. Live in the wow. Live in the reality of knowing that your whole life is good. Live in the heartbeat of Martin Mondays and intentional intimacy. May that anchor you in this week as you build legacy, one wow, one moment at a time. See you next week.